Hey, it's Mike Costa, your host of My Morning Cup. I'm excited to tell you about Entrepreneurs Week coming up April 29th through May 3rd, and our little podcast, My Morning Cup, will be a big part of that. On May 1st, we'll be doing a live episode at 9 a.m. We'll be at Finley Stadium in the Ultra Club. So if you want to come out and see a live podcast being produced with our guest, Barry Large of Access America, of Lamppost Group, of Brickyard, it'll be a great conversation. I hope you can join us. To learn more, go to chabusiness.org or CHABUSINESS.org. Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Matt Hullander, the first repeat guest we've had on My Morning Cup. Since I last spoke to Matt on episode 3, Matt's released a book called The Daily Climb, and he's been active in a variety of businesses in real estate. Matt is back to talk about what he's been up to and how a visit to a doctor 6 years ago changed his outlook on life. Matt, welcome to My Morning Cup. Here's the big question. Is cold coffee still in your morning cup?
My wife and I argue about what we're going to put. We have the fancy coffee maker. You got to put the beans in. And so I'm drinking her coffee this morning. I think it's called Simply.
Simply?
Yeah.
But you're still doing cult coffee, aren't you?
Yeah, still involved with Colt, still working on Nashville Grind. It's been a few months in the making, but it's all coming together, and we should launch the new website really soon.
Oh, that's exciting. You know, before we started going, Matt, I talked about how busy you are now. And, a lot of people sell their business and retire or just take it easy. I think you're probably doing more now than I've ever seen you do.
Yeah, I sold my business in my 40s, so I wasn't going to stop there, and it's just not in my DNA. I'm not internally wired to slow down. So I kept going, and I guess my toughest challenge is knowing what to focus on and not being a variety of too many opportunities, and recognize that opportunities are always out there. I don't have to take every one of them. Yeah,
absolutely. I did want to talk a little bit about selling your business and see how that relates to how you define yourself. For years, you were known on local commercials and you were the face of Hullco. And now that you're not there and you're not associated with Hullco and the name's changed, is it West Shore Homes?
That's correct.
How did that affect you, or did it affect you? Was there a bit of separation between that persona and now moving on to a new stage of life?
It didn't bother me for a good while because I stayed so busy. But recently, there's things I miss about it, of course.
Yeah.
I don't regret selling the business, but, in the past, I had a great team. I had a marketing manager, a production manager, a sales manager, a GM. We had weekly updates, and we had our scorecard, and we would collaborate, and I could delegate. And that was a lot of fun to me to grow something with a team. And now I've got all these other ventures, but it's typically just me and my vehicle. So
yeah, I get that because, after I left the TV station, now I'm doing this for myself. You do miss having that collaboration, that team aspect. And you go into your office and you look around and you're just looking at yourself.
Yeah, well, call me and we'll ride around together.
That sounds like a pretty good deal there. So you sold your business, and when we last spoke to you, you had just finished writing the book. What spurred you on to write this?
I felt led to write it. I had a lot of stories to tell. I was at a moment in my life I felt closer to God. I was just in a good spot, and I felt I just turned 50, and I had some stories that I wanted to share and some principles that are in the book that I thought could help other people, and it has helped other people. I've got a lot of positive feedback, and I did it fairly quickly because I wanted to commit to finish it. And I knew if I took my time, I may never get around to doing that. So I wrote it in just about 8 months. and then released it at the end of last year, and sales are going good. I'm promoting it around the country. I think my challenge is most people that have, New York Times bestsellers, they have a big personal brand already. They're a Tony Robbins or a John Maxwell who just released his 88th book.
Jeez.
And he'll sell a lot of books because everybody knows who he is. And for me, outside of Chattanooga, I didn't really have a brand. So I'm I did it the opposite way, but I'm still trying to get it out there. And there's always a new audience or somebody that's not heard of it or a country it's never been introduced to. So, and it'll be around when I'm not. So I'm going to keep pushing it as much as I can because I think it helps other people. And we're donating all the money to charity. So I want to help the Jason Foundation as well. So I can't focus on it full time, but I do it as much as I can.
Well, it is a great legacy project that you bring up. It'll be around forever. It's something that you're leaving your daughter, you're leaving your generations to come. Take me a little bit through the writing process, because there's a lot of people out there say, you know what, I want to write a book. Did you get up every morning and say, I'm going to write for an hour? Or how'd you do that?
I walk every morning, or on pretty mornings. It's to the end of my street and back is 1 mile, and I try to walk 5 miles every morning, and I would just record myself in my phone when I thought of a story that I may want to tell or a principle that I learned, or I listened to a lot of audio books. So I stole some stuff that was important to me from other books that I wanted to share in mine. And then I just took all of that information. I used a local publisher called Foresight Publishing. It's kind of a hybrid. Some may call it a self-published book. I'm not with a traditional book publisher, but her name's Kathy, and we would get on a Zoom call, and I basically had all of my thoughts, and she would help me put them in what we thought might be the right order. And then she helped me proofread it, and then she helped me with the process to get my ISBN number and the barcode and how to upload it to Amazon. So she did help me through that process, which was helpful. And it really went pretty smooth. Even though Kathy and myself and my family and my wife twice have read through the book, I still have found like 5 misspelled words in here. So I may at some point update my gallery, take away a story, add a couple more, and maybe that'll be the Daily Climb version 2 at some point.
Well, I would assume there's going to be a version 2 because, as you said, you sold your company at age 40, and that's a really young age to move on to something else. When your book came out, I ordered it on Amazon. I read it, and I was 2 things jumped out at me. One, I had no idea about your cancer scare, and the other was how candid and honest you were with a lot of stuff that a lot of people, when they put pen to paper, still want to protect that image. And I found you to be very open on that. Talk to us a little bit about that whole process of the doctor saying, I want you to go see an oncologist, and what all that entailed and what feelings it brought.
Yeah. I went for a routine physical and a few days and, gave blood for routine blood work. And a few days later, my doctor's a family friend, so we have each other's cell phone, and he called me and said, I want you to come in so I can go over your blood results. And that's really all he said. So I went in expecting to, like always, I've always had, low cholesterol, no high blood pressure. I've been really healthy.
Well, you're always in shape too, and that's important.
Well, and I do exercise a lot, so I wasn't expecting the outcome, which was him telling me that my neutrophils and my white blood count was really low and that he wanted me to go to Tennessee Oncology. And so that made me really nervous. I went there.
Can I back you up a second?
Yeah.
So you're sitting in his office and family friend, and he's talking to you pretty directly and honestly, and he hits you with that. What's the first thing you think about?
I said a cuss word to him, and I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And he said, I'm not going to beat around the bush right here. Look at this chart. This is where you should be, and this is where you are. And so he didn't sugarcoat it. He knew I could take it, and so he hit me with it. And I was on the phone with Tennessee Oncology before I left his office making my appointment. So I went to Dr. Greg Sutton there, and they did every test that checked for every genetic anomaly, toxin, virus, and the test didn't yield any results. So they asked me to go get a ultrasound of all my organs, And that kind of gave them a clue. I had an enlarged spleen.
Mm-hmm.
I had existing rheumatoid arthritis, and I had the low white blood count. And typically, that's a recipe for leukemia. So,
that's got to scare you to death.
Oh, it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And so he wanted me to do a bone marrow biopsy. And I was looking over his shoulder at his nurse, and he said, "No, we can do this here in the office." And she's shaking her head and like cutting her throat. "No, don't do that." And I said, "Hey, I'm a bit of a sissy. You can put me to sleep for that." So I went in for the procedure. Nice lady, doctor, did the bone marrow biopsy. And I remember when I woke up, my wife was there, and they said, "It'll be 5 days before we get these results." And so that was a tough week.
How long was it between when he first said, "I want you to go to an oncologist," and you had the bone marrow?
It took a while because they did a lot of blood tests at Tennessee Oncology. I would say that was a 2.5, 3 week period.
So, and obviously you told Jenny right away, and you guys are, I imagine you're sitting on pins and needles the whole time.
Yeah, and really Jenny was the only one that knew. I didn't want my daughter to know until I knew anything, conclusively, and my parents didn't know. Maybe my friend Bobby knew because he drove me to the hospital for my bone marrow biopsy that morning.
But anyone else who knew you or was doing business with you, interacting with you on a daily basis, had no idea because you didn't tell them, but you probably didn't even show it in your daily, how you interacted with them.
It was tough. I wasn't going to just sit at home, so I still went to work. But, conversations were kind of offbeat and strained, and maybe they could tell something was going on. But I kept it between me and my friend Bobby and my wife. And, that whole time frame, by the time I got the phone call from Dr. Volberg, my family doctor, going through the process with Tennessee Oncology and then waiting on the bone marrow biopsy results, was about a month. And it was tough it was good and bad. It was scary, but it puts things in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I won't draw out the conclusion. I didn't have leukemia. It's what they diagnosed me with. It's called Felty syndrome, which is something I could live with. But the real diagnosis I got was that I wasn't living life on purpose. So that changed my perspective on the way I looked at life and family and my time and who I spent it with and what activities I did, some of my habits. And that also was a big, factor in me writing the book.
Well, explain what you mean by not living life on purpose.
Well, I think when you're looking mortality in the eye, you seem to, take life with a different approach, and family means more and close friendships mean more. And then you realize all the time you dedicate to stuff that really doesn't matter. And I was just going and going and going and doing it and doing it and doing it. But I really was just going through the motions. I wasn't doing as much on purpose. I wasn't, living my life to the fullest extent or doing the things I could be doing that the big man wanted me to do. So it changed my perspective a lot in a positive way.
And I'm just trying to put myself in those shoes. I would imagine it showed you what you thought was important, wasn't important. And even probably what you knew was important, you probably weren't spending enough time making important. Is that fair?
Well, I think that's true. And I was just so busy.
Yeah.
And we like to wear this, badge of honor. I'm busy. You ask your friends, "Hey, what's going on?" "Well, I'm busy." And then you say, "Well, I'm busy too." Like you're proud of that. And, I realized my busyness was keeping me from having a conversation with my daughter or being present or in the moment and not on my phone. And I was bad. I was juggling a lot of balls. My family was getting the short end of the stick because I was out chasing work dreams. And once I had this scare, it really changed my mindset. And I'm still motivated, enjoy all the, business ventures I'm in. But I try my best to not let my family get the short end of the stick while I'm doing that. They should be first. And, we talk about priorities and one of the principles of the book. And, I would always, if you asked me, and this even true 6 years ago, what are your top 5 priorities? I would say God, my wife, my daughter, my friends, and my job. And outwardly, I I meant that, but I was really just a skilled liar because it was the complete opposite.
Yeah.
It was work and my friends and then my family and then God. So, and I think about that daily, and sometimes we get them out of order, and I understand people get busy, but it's keeping it top of mind and just trying to, which is the whole premise of the book, The Daily Climb, is work toward that every day.
How has it changed your relationship with your family? What I mean by that, has your daughter and your wife been able to see a difference in your daily activity?
I think so, and I hope so. And I'd like to hear their answer if they were here. But yeah, I think so, because when I had my core business that I sold, that was 60, 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
And then I would still try to side hustle real estate. And so now I get to be selective, and I have the opportunity to say no. And if I've got a dozen opportunities and I want to focus on 3 of them, I can say no to the others. And that leaves time for my family. And I'm fortunate to be in a situation where I can pick and choose what I need to do.
Yeah. And I see how that it leads to living life purposely. You've decided, okay, this is my top priority, and I've got to purposely make time for them.
Yeah. And I think, when I took that mindset, and a lot of it is mindset, I want to be open-minded to what the day may bring. And I also feel like what goes around comes around. Mm-hmm. And that, whether you look at that in a religious aspect, and Luke 21 says, to whom much is given, much is required. And I feel like it's my responsibility. The more I'm blessed, the more I need to pay it forward. And God puts those people in my life, and whether they help me or I help them, I feel like without that mindset, those conversations or relationships or introductions wouldn't happen otherwise.
Before you went through this and you changed your attitude, how you went about things, did you worry a lot about the future? Did you try and control things you couldn't control?
Yeah, and I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I work on it daily. I am a worrier. I think if we can blame something, we can blame a lot of stuff on our parents. And I blame my father. I hate to do that openly. But the tornado in 2011 hit us head on. I lost an employee. We lost relatives. My brother-in-law died in a car wreck. My daughter had to have plastic surgery from getting attacked by a dog when she was 6 years old. Everybody has tragedy, don't get me wrong, but we had a lot of it happen in just a few years that it makes you worry a lot.
Yeah.
And now every time my daughter just turned 19 last Friday. Every time she gets in the car, I do that like a parent would. But it's reflecting on, hey, worrying's actually, the Bible says, a sin. And so just prepare and then, put it in God's hands. And so I'm a lot better about worry now.
Yeah.
Used to, it kept me awake at night. Now it doesn't.
I asked you that because I've struggled with that myself, and I've always tried to control everything, control the outcomes. And I used to scoff at people who said, well, I'm just going to turn it over to God. And I would say, well, no, you got to do this, this, and this. But I get that now, because you can't control what's coming down the pike. The only thing you can control is how you react to it.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. That's the only thing we can control. And when people's emotions get high or they get upset, that's when they got to reflect and say, hey, my response to this is going to affect my emotions. It's going to affect the other person's emotions. And I guess, people talk about flow state, or, there's a book, I won't say the whole title, that's The Subtle Art of Not Caring.
Yeah.
And then I think about the best rounds of golf I've had, or when I just don't care. And so that and worrying kind of go hand in hand. I'm not saying just live your life like you don't care, but sometimes good things happen when you quit worrying.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. That for me over the last 5 years has been what I've worked on the most. I always go back to my favorite line in a Tom Petty song: "As sure as night turns to day, most things I worry about don't happen anyway."
Right. They won't be here tomorrow.
Yeah. The other principle, we talked a little bit about purpose, but the other one you brought up is the power of no. And it's something that I believe in, but it's also something when people hear me say this will think it's a bit of a dichotomy for me. When I first got to town, I took the attitude I had to say yes to everything, so you could get established. But Talk about why it's so important to prioritize and be able to say no.
I was like you and horrible at this and still struggle with it, but I would say yes to everything, and I felt like I had to. And this goes back to when I, had my own business. I felt like I had to be at everything that happened at the trade center or every nonprofit activity, and I had to say yes to every meeting. And if I got invited to be on a board or something at the Chamber of Commerce or a nonprofit asked me to join, I did that, and I said yes to everything. And then I just realized after the process we've just talked about that that's really not serving me. And in some situations, it wasn't serving the boards I was on. And I woke up one day and resigned from 4 boards and within an hour.
How'd that make you feel?
It was a big relief.
Yeah.
And still it's tough. And I have to decide, for example, I had a local nonprofit call me recently that wanted me to be on their board, and they meet 6 times a year, and they have this golf committee and this concert committee, and it was a lot. And I said no, I didn't want to, but I knew I needed to because I had other obligations. The Jason Foundation, I was recently asked to be on their board. They meet twice a year. It's in Nashville. It's something close to my heart, and it's important to me and my family. It's where the proceeds from my book go. So that one I said yes to, but it's knowing that you have the opportunity to say no when a lot of times people feel pressured to say yes. So now I'm only on 2 boards, the Jason Foundation and First Horizon Bank.
And you're able to give those 2 boards 100% of yourself as opposed to showing up 25% of the time.
If you have, let's say you had a dozen ventures or boards or activities, and I talk about the one thing and focus a lot in my book. And I think for a lot of people, that's extremely important because if you try too much, you're half-assing all of them.
Yeah.
And you can't be great at a handful. I've decided the way I'm wired and just my nature, I can't focus on one thing, and that's okay. But I can narrow it down to 3 or 4 versus trying to do 20. So it's different for everybody. And if you're a specialist, if you're a heart surgeon, I would prefer you focus on your one thing. But for a lot of people, you don't have to. We go around, and I've read the book, The One Thing. I've read it 3 times. I love the book. I listen to the One Thing podcast every week. But for me, I could never identify my one thing, and I realized I could help people doing 3 or 4. So,
were you that way growing up as a kid?
Yeah, and that's back. I'm going to keep blaming my dad for stuff today. When I was a kid, he started a wood-burning stove company that led into storm window manufacturing. We were a hardware dealer. We sold hot tubs. I remember for a while we sold solar panels, and that led into the business we have, and we wouldn't have had it without him. But at some point we had to narrow our focus, and we couldn't do all those things. And, by the time I sold the business, we did one-day bathrooms, windows, and doors, and that was it.
That's an important point you bring up for people who are starting their own businesses. And I'm guilty of this too. When people ask me what I do, and it's kind of like, well, I do a little bit of this and I do a little bit of that. And you really don't get successful till you determine what you do best and you focused on that.
Yeah, and it took me a while to realize it. Back to my Hullco days, we built sunrooms and we did roofing and we did siding and we did all, windows, doors, screen rooms, and then we got into the bathroom remodeling. And when you're a sales guy, or we have sales goals, or we had our weekly meetings and somebody came in and sold a $150,000 sunroom, of course they were getting commission and we all got excited. But it took me a long time to realize that we couldn't be great at those 10 things and that we needed to choose, which products can we be the best at, and let's focus on that and just do more of that. And so I encourage them when I consult with small businesses, I see that a lot, and they see a shiny object and they want to, go into a division of their company and keep adding and adding and adding. And if you look at all or most of the great companies, they normally are centered around one thing. And so that's what I encourage small business owners to do, is to figure out what you're best at, focus on that, and then do more of it.
And I agree with you 100% on that. But as a small business person now, I'm very guilty of I know I need to do that. But you know what? I just got this call. and this person's willing to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to find a way to do it because you know what? It'd be nice to have the money, and I'd like to have a successful outcome on this.
Yeah, and that you can't do that with, a dozen avenues of your business. You can do it with two or three. And that's why I say, you don't have to have the one thing unless you're just a specialist in that one thing. But be careful not to keep adding stuff to your plate.
Yeah, because then you're not doing anything well.
Well, yourself and whoever you're helping are not getting your full attention. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the acronym TIME. Today is my everything.
Yeah, when you say no, you're actually saying yes to something else. Because if you said yes to everything, you've just gave away all your time. You've limited your time. So if I say no to something that would have took 2 hours out of my day, I just said yes to my family, or I said yes to an activity that I do need to focus on or that I should be working on. So, a lot of people no seems like a negative word to most people, and they're scared to say no. I feel the complete opposite now. I think it can be, I look forward to saying no. I think it's a positive thing because you're creating more time for yourself and you're saying yes to something else. So whatever you would have spent that time on, just move it to something you're more passionate about. Now, if you're passionate about it, or if your wife calls and says, Mike, do you want to have date night tonight? Then that's a yes. But you get to choose when to say no.
Better be a yes, I'll tell you that right now. Or you may not see me.
That's right.
What's your, and I don't want to say favorite, but what's the one principle in the book that you come back to time and time again as not just what has helped you, but you use it as an example to others?
I think I talk a lot about vision in the book, and you can relate that to your personal life or in business. I'm a huge proponent of having a vision and knowing where you want to go. For example, I'm having this conversation, even there's a WhatsApp conversation on my phone right this minute going on about this, but I'm a partner in it's called a DSO. It's a dental service organization, private equity group that rolls up and buys dentist offices. And my partners and I are having this discussion about how many more practices do we buy? At what point do we sell? Do we merge with another DSO? There's venture capital money that's coming into the market. And I think it's important to have a vision. And so we've went through this exercise. This is the EBITDA we want to reach. This is how many practices we need to acquire. This is, when there'll be an event. And I think for your personal life, it's, and I'm not big on goals. I actually say screw goals in the book, and I want to explain that. Most people, they just don't keep goals. It's bothered me because I've tried it for many years, and you can write it down every morning and you can say your daily affirmations. And I'm not knocking anybody that does daily affirmations, but typically, and if you look at, you can Google how many people keep a New Year's resolution, it's 8%. And then by the end of the year, 90% of that 8% put the weight back on or didn't keep their New Year's resolution. So mine's more about having a vision of who you want to be. So let's say it's health related. What does that person look like in the future, and what would their habits be? And then create systems. I've always, when I had my business, we had a sticker on everybody's desk that said the system is the solution. And it comes from the book, The E-Myth. And so what systems do you put in place, and how would that person act versus saying, I'm going to lose 15 pounds? Because even if you achieve that, you're probably going to gain 10 or 15 of them back. So it's having a vision of what you want to look like in the future. And then what systems do you put in place, and just work on that every day. And you're going to screw up, and you're going to take 2 steps back, and then you got to take 3 forward. And so I guess the underlying principle of the book, if you're making me choose one, would be that. And if I could pick 2, it would be the principle of what goes around comes around, and pay it forward, and to whom much is given, much is required, and just keep climbing every day. And that's kind of the premise of the book.
I like what you have to say about goals, because goals can become a negative. You set these goals every year, and you get discouraged when you don't hit them, and it becomes a negative, and it actually works against you. Believe it or not, over my lifetime, I've probably lost 400 pounds because I've had those goals of losing weight. But you put it back on, and what I found, I'm going to use the weight example again. You can get the weight down, but it's never enough. So you lose 20, 25 pounds, and you go, yeah, but I got another 10 to go. And then you end up putting 10 on, and you didn't enjoy where you were at the time when you were closest to your goal.
No, I completely agree. And I've gotten a little pushback, and I want to clarify. I think goals can be great for a business. Mm-hmm. If we have a sales goal, or we have a yearly revenue goal, or we have a profit goal, or we want our gross margin to be X percent, I do believe in those goals. I think this is the portion of the book where I look at more of the individual and what you and I are talking about now. So, people are normally too broad in their goals too, or they'll say, I want to be a better spouse, or I want to drink less, or whatever the goal may be. And how do you measure that? So I think if you picture yourself as, if it's I'm going to be a better spouse, what does that look like in a month or 6 months or a year or 5 years? And whatever that person would be doing is the way you need to act.
Yeah, and I think that specificity is very important, just to have a broad goal of, I want my business to generate $10 million of revenue. Well, if you're only at 250,000, let's make that goal 400,000 and then step it in there.
It blows my mind. I work with a lot of small businesses, and when I first, go in and look at things, they have very few systems. They don't know where they're going. They don't have a vision. Many of them don't have values or understand what their mission is. And then I explain the difference in a vision and a mission. And then, a lot of times when they have values, they're too general. And I'm guilty of this because for years at Hullco, hanging on the wall, we had faith, family, integrity, dependability. And a lot of people use those. And then one day it hit me, that's permission to play. Like, I don't want somebody to work here if they're not honest or if they don't have integrity. So we kept those hanging on the wall, but we took a hard look at what our new values should be. And I encourage a lot of companies to do this. What values can you take action on? Deliver a wow customer experience. When in doubt, act. Make a profit and generate cash. Those are some of the ones we changed to that then we could explain to the employees that would make sense to them and empower them. And so I encourage a lot of small businesses to take a look at not only what is your vision and where are you headed, and then put systems in place to get there, but look at your values too and your mission. To me, the vision is often internal, and that would be, hey, my management team, we're going to sell and produce $25 million a year and remain the largest home improvement company in East Tennessee. That was our vision. Well, our mission is more outwardly and for the community, and that was to make it better for our coworkers, our customers, and our community, and something that the employees and the community and our clients could rally around. And it's great for every company to identify what that is.
So just take me through the process of, I'm a small business. I bring you in to consult on my business. What's the first thing you do?
I ask them what their vision is, and I'm often surprised that they either can't give me an answer or they stumble around it, and very few can define what it is, because if you don't know where you're going, and then two would be, how do you measure it? And a lot of times that's with financials for a lot of these small businesses, and they weren't trained in school. Or if they own a heat and air company and they used to work for Tommy's Heat and Air Company and now they got Bobby's Heat and Air Company, they don't know how to read a P&L. They don't know how to read a balance sheet. They don't have a CRM that tracks their leads or know where their leads came from or how to spend their marketing dollars. And so those are normally the top two things I look at is, what is your vision? What systems do you have in place to reach that vision? And then we look at financials. And I'm big on having a scorecard because if you don't know the score of the game, you don't know if you're winning or not. And so I kind of, not the full EOS system, but one piece I took from that book, Traction, is they had a scorecard, and I like to have a scorecard. And like for the dental practice, it may be different what you're measuring. That might be, how many treatment plans are we converting, or how much financing we're offering, or how many reviews we may get, or whatever you're tracking. And then we would color code things, green, yellow, or red. And for the sake of time, there's no reason to spend an hour in a meeting talking about the green. That's all good. We need to talk about the red. So where do we need to improve things? And we would go straight to that and try to fix those things to where the next meeting, those weren't red anymore. So that's a very, very quick overview of how I would assess a company.
Are you doing that whether you're consulting with someone or looking at investing them? It remains the same?
Yeah, I'm doing it with both. When I consult now, and it's typically a home service business for me because that was the industry I came from, although I had a 5-year non-solicit, non-compete, so I can't work directly for a competitor of West Shore. But like I'm working with a group to build a hotel in Huntsville, Alabama right now, or any of my real estate ventures, or like the dental group I'm involved in. I want to see the same thing for the businesses I'm involved in. But if I'm consulting, that's kind of the first thing I want to put into place. And I want buy-in from them to understand why that's important.
Mm-hmm. Take it to someone who's been through the process and wants to sell their business now. What makes a business more sellable than another business?
Oh, that's a whole podcast in itself. But hitting the high notes, you need systems, you need a vision, you need a great number two, unless the owner's going to stay on. So typically, and this is real broad definition here, but typically, whether it's private equity or a competitor or somebody from out of town wants to buy your business, you either need to stay for a certain amount of time, or if they're buying you and you're leaving, you got to have a great number two in place. I think that's important. Knowing your numbers is also crucial. Understanding what makes up EBITDA, which normally companies will just, for people that don't understand EBITDA, we'll call it profit. Knowing what your true profit is and how it's affected by everything above the line. And then having a good team is going to be very important. A lot of times market share and the way that you market is important. If I were not at the time the largest home improvement company in town, I most likely would have not attracted the company that acquired us. And then make it a competitive, marketplace and realize if you ever do get ready to sell, and feel free to reach out and I'll help you. Sometimes maybe you do need an investment banker. Sometimes you may need to pay that commission for somebody to help you because if you've never been through the process before, you can shortchange yourself. You may leave some money on the table. Sometimes there's opportunities to roll into what I call the second go around. For example, if we sell our 6 dental offices, I don't want to put that money in my pocket and leave. I want half of it, but I want to roll half of it into what they're going to do and how big they are and their future success. So a lot of times the owner can get paid twice, and often that second time they get paid more than they did the first time. So just knowing all the, opportunities within selling your business, and then there's typically more, if one person wants to buy you, there's typically others out there that will. And if you get competing term sheets or competing bids, you can often raise the value or the multiple. And then I think maybe my best advice would be to find the right attorney and the right CPA to work with. And I was fortunate. I had, Dylan Thornberry and Wayne Peters that were my attorneys, and then Will Clegg at HHM was my CPA, and going through what the buyer calls a quality of earnings report and just understand the whole process, they were very helpful with. And then on the attorney side, they know what could bite you later. And, how do you set up the escrow account, and where is that money held, and what percentage of the purchase price is it? And then you have to look at tax consequences and, are they buying your assets? Are they buying the actual company? Or are they buying your goodwill? Are they buying your customer database? And how that's split up determines how much taxes you have to pay. So I could go on a whole podcast about selling your business.
Well, we'll have to have you back to talk about that. But what I hear you saying is you've got to bring in the experts, kind of stick with the things you do best, selling a business, if you've never sold one before, is an all brand new experience. And I'm sure it's a lot of foreign language, and terms you don't necessarily know and understand.
Yeah, it's tough, and I learned a lot through it. So just don't go into it blind, and understanding warranties, and there's so much language in an asset purchase agreement. And I think mine was 90 plus pages, and it's understanding all that. And, for example, the non-solicit, non-compete, I maybe could have negotiated that more on the front end, but honestly, I don't want to sell windows and doors anymore, so I don't care. But there's a lot to know, and it's not a quick process. If you chose to sell your company today and you did it the right way, that might take 3 months. Yeah. So it's just,
or longer.
Well, and if you know you may want to one day, you really need to prepare for it now. Don't wait till the year you're going to sell to get your financials in order. And I think this is good advice. Even if you're never going to sell, or you're going to shut the door one day, or you're going to leave it to your kids, or there's so many ways to do it, but you should run your business as if you were going to sell, because then you've got your stuff in order, your financials are accurate, your EBITDA is probably higher, and you're just in a better position, even if you choose not to do it.
Makes sense. Do you ever look back and over the last couple of years and go, wow, I can't believe where I am now?
Yeah, time flies, though. It seems like yesterday I had my cancer scare, and yesterday that I sold my business, but a lot's happened between now and then. But it's been an adventure, but a positive adventure. I mean, there's been bumps in the road, but I've met a lot of great people and been introduced to, new industries and businesses, and it's been fun. I even, my values, we talk about values for a business, but you can have them for yourself too. And mine is integrity, fun, and connection. And, I feel like I am a connector. I get asked 15 times a day, who do I call for this? Who do I call for that? What would you do in this situation? And it was funny. My CPA and I had lunch recently, and he's like, we got to figure out how you monetize this, because you spend half your time just helping other people. But that goes back to the principle in the book about what goes around comes around. So ultimately it works out.
I've got a little bit more time, and I got a couple more questions to ask you. There's one other principle, the last chapter of the book, you talk about your eulogy. Explain that.
To some people, that may seem morbid. To me, it doesn't. We're all going to die. It's a one-lap race, but it's going to come to an end, and you are going to die. So
can't get away with not dying.
Let's start with the end in mind. And so that's why I wrote my eulogy, and I hope to rewrite it every year, because that's another year I'm here. But I wrote my eulogy as if I were living into my 90s. And what do I want to have achieved by then? And how do I want to be remembered? And what vacations do I want Jenny and I to have been on? And what do I want to help my daughter with? So it's really, it goes back to the vision. And, I end the book the way your life's going to end, with a funeral. And so it's just thinking ahead, what would I like, to be told at my funeral? And Paula McDaniel, local realtor, her and her husband George are good friends of ours, and her father and my father were best friends. And when I was a teenager, her dad Paul died in a plane crash. A lot of people from Chattanooga will remember that. And I remember going to the funeral. It was Ooltewah Baptist Church, and the pastor, Larry Williams, got on stage, and it wasn't your typical funeral. Larry wasn't there to remember Paul's life. He wasn't there to preach. They set 2 microphones on the stage, and he said, "It's not my place to remember Paul, it's your place." And people just lined up, and they celebrated his life, and they told stories his family hadn't even heard about how he had helped others. And that always has stuck with me, and it's kind of the way I would like to go out. So I went ahead and wrote my eulogy, and then I ended mine by saying there's 2 microphones up here if anybody wants to celebrate Matt.
Yeah, well, I like that. Is there anything I'm missing that you want to talk about before we wrap things up?
No, if somebody hasn't gotten the book, I would love for you to read it and give me feedback.
Yeah, how can they get it?
A bunch of ways. Amazon's the easiest, or if you go to matthullander.com, It has all the ways there. If you listen to audiobooks, it's on Apple and Audible and AweSound. And then on Amazon, you can get softback or hardback. And if you can't afford one, just go to my website and send me a message and I'll give you one. So I just want to get it out so it helps other people. But if you do buy one, go ahead and buy 10 and give them to your friends. And that way the money will go help the Jason Foundation, which raises awareness for suicide prevention.
Yeah, and that's a great thing you're doing, helping them raise money. Before I get to the last question, I do need to remind our listeners who makes all this possible. So it's a big thank you to the Tennessee Valley Authority for sponsoring My Morning Cup. Follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service, and visit TVA.com/do good here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. All right, we just talked about the principle, or the last chapter, my eulogy. So my typical final question is about what you'd tell your 25-year-old self. But since you've already been a guest before and we've been talking about your eulogy, I want to boil it down to, what would you put as your epitaph?
Well, I want to answer that other question. I think I've been reflecting on that.
All right.
I would dream bigger.
You've already done pretty big.
Well, if someone else can do it, I can do it. And I think a lot of folks out there, whether they own a small business and they have goals for that, or as an individual, or if you've never written a book and you want to write a book, go big.
Yeah.
Don't think small, think big. And then I wanted to ask you a final question. Has Chip Baker been on here twice, or is it just me?
Just you officially. Okay. Just you officially. And Chip is jealous, I can tell you that.
I didn't want to brag about being your first repeat guest. I really just wanted to let Chip know that I got here before he did.
I will tell you, Chip and Roy Vaughn came back and interviewed me, so that doesn't count them as a guest. And you still got a step ahead of him.
And it's a title I'll always keep, Chip.
So let me just say one thing about the think big. The other person who we had on the podcast who said pretty much the same thing, Bob Corker. If you're going to do something, why not do it big?
Yeah, and he's doing big things even still.
Yeah, as are you. So I appreciate you coming back, Matt. It's always good to see you.
You too, Matt. Thanks for having me. And go Big Orange.
Go Big Orange. There you go. Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.